The Lunchly controversy, the new kids product that Mr. Beast, KSI, and Logan Paul have released, designed to disrupt the kids' food market, or to really disrupt Lunchables, who's had just a pretty big monopoly on the sort of like ready-to-eat sort of lunch snack type thing for a while. The controversy comes in when this new Lunchly product is called healthy. And in typical Thomas DeLauer fashion, I want to look at the ingredients. I want to look at these foods and I want to just see if they really are healthier. One of the things that I have issues with right out the gate, though, is just the word healthy. Right? If you look at how the EU operates, like they have different standards. There's European code 1924-2006, if you want to get weird and look it up. It really actually stops these claims from being made. Like you can't just call a food healthy or call a food natural without really being able to back it up. So I wish that that was the case in the US, because some of these claims just seem a little bit, I don't know, stretched. And I don't have any issues personally with Logan Paul, with Mr. Beast, or KSI. They're not the type of people I would probably hang out with, but I also want to make this a very real video. I'm not just going to come at this in some inflammatory sense. Let's look at the facts and let's find a way to move forward, and let's find a way to look at the best solution. Because I have kids, I pay close attention to like what I bring into my house. I do look at that stuff. Anyhow, let's go ahead and let's break down the ingredients a little bit more. So I would say first off, it is marginally better than Lunchables. And sometimes baby steps and a little bit of risk reduction is what we have to look at, right? So I'll give them that. The biggest thing that they probably did is they replaced a sugary Capri Sun with a Prime electrolyte drink. Now, the Prime electrolyte drink is definitely not the cleanest looking drink out there, and it probably has people raising their concerns and eyebrows just as much as Capri Sun in a different category, right? So I don't want to focus too much on Prime. I just want to make a mention that from a caloric standpoint, you're probably just reducing the calories mostly by getting rid of the Capri Sun. But I want to look at a couple of things. They've got a pizza version of Lunchly, and they have a turkey stackers version of Lunchly. Let's start with the pizza one. And I want you to stick with me through this entire video, because we're going to talk about the industry in general, how much money is in this industry, and why Lunchly might have been created, and how we could possibly do things better. So it's a comprehensive video, not just about food. If you look at the pizza version, and you look at the ingredients of the pizza version, it's a little sketchy if you ask me. I mean, you're already starting with bleached wheat flour, which, okay, whatever. That is what it is. Just about everything is going to be bleached wheat flour. But I mean, you're losing pretty much any of the nutritional value from flour. It's very much so refined. You're not dealing with like a whole grain. Okay, so first steps, if I was trying to make a healthier pizza crust that was just marginally healthier, I would at least use like a whole grain type of thing, right? I mean, obviously I have my own biases on what I would probably do, but in this case, whole grain would be easy. But if you look at where it says shortening, they're using pure hydrogenated soybean oil. Hydrogenated soybean oil is literally a trans fat. That is literally like you've taken soybean oil, which is already probably oxidized and not exactly the best, and then you're making it into a trans fat by hydrogenating it. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to me why a product that's supposed to be healthier would blatantly be using one of literally the most documented ingredients when it comes down to like visceral fat accumulation and just not good for metabolic health. So right out the gate, that concerns me. And that's just in the crust. Now, if you look at the sauce, if you look at the ingredients literally listed right on their website, yeah, you're gonna have things like sodium benzoate, which is a preservative. Could we go back and forth on pros and cons? Yes, we could. So I'm not going to focus on the sodium benzoate. I'm going to focus on this other one that is quote unquote highly refined soybean oil. Couldn't even just use regular soybean oil. I had to go with highly refined. I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. Now, soybean oil is already a very fragile polyunsaturated fat. When you refine it, when you deodorize it, when you use these different chemicals to sort of as solvents, it just denatures them more. And then they're going to sit on a shelf and they're going to denature and go through peroxidation, where it just basically oxidizes the oil more. If you wanted to use a different oil that was going to be more stable, you'd use something like, I don't know, maybe avocado oil or something, but that would make it hard on margins. I understand that from an economic perspective, but if you're making claims on a healthier food product, maybe just wash away a little bit of the margin so you could at least back up that claim. The pepperoni actually was kind of decent. Not that bad with the pepperoni. Like they didn't have any nitrites or nitrates added, so I appreciated that. That was a nice thing to see. If you look at the macronutrients on this, yeah, 360 calories. Yeah, I mean, you're in the same ballpark as Lunchables. Like that's gonna range around the same ballpark. So we're not really like changing a ton on the calories. Again, probably mostly coming from the fact that you're going with a prime electrolyte drink compared to say a, Capri Sun or whatever sugary beverage might be in regular Lunchables. The saturated fat content is pretty high considering the amount of also refined carbs. So what makes the standard American diet is the high presence of saturated fat and the high presence of refined carbohydrates. Saturated fats independently are probably not a huge issue in a balanced diet, just as like even refined carbs might not be that problematic, but definitely not whole grain carbs. Like whole grain, that's gonna be fine, and much better. Like I'm not gonna say it's good, but it's better, right? So in this case, you've got 44 grams from purely refined carbs and sugar, and you've got a fatty acid profile that's basically diddly squat. Like you've got oxidized soybean oils, you've got saturated fats that have come from the cheese and possibly from the trans fats that have come from the hydrogenated soybean oil in the pizza crust. So the macronutrient profile is not exactly good. And the micronutrient profile I couldn't really expand upon, but they're using fortified flours, which are probably just getting some vitamins coming in from that. So that one leaves a lot to be desired, but I want to talk about the turkey stacker option, which is, in my opinion, the better option. So we'll break that one down. Now, for the record, I put a link down below for Thrive Market. If someone is actually shopping for their house, not necessarily as a competition to Lunchables or Lunchly, I would recommend you try Thrive Market because it allows you to shop for things that don't have some of these preservatives and don't have some of these things that people are kind of concerned about, these nefarious usual suspects. So Thrive Market's whole mantra is about making better options available to people and making them at an affordable price so you're not having to go to Whole Foods and pay ridiculous prices. So I put a link down below for 30% off your entire grocery order from Thrive Market. That way you can check them out and you get that entire discount off your whole grocery order and you get a free $60 gift. But it's just kind of nice to shop and see what other options you have. Things like Siete tortilla chips, which are gonna be using avocado oil. Okay, things like that. Those are just examples. So I recommend you check them out and try doing some grocery shopping through them for a little while and see. So that link is down below. Okay, let's break down the ingredients of the turkey stackers. First off, the turkey stackers is a much lower calorie option. We're only talking 6 grams of saturated fat, 12 grams of total fat, and 22 grams of carbohydrates in this one. So already going to be a better option if you're looking at sort of just the overall macronutrients and calories, but let's look at what's in it. The crackers are interesting. I would take these crackers over the pizza crust. They're using high oleic sunflower oil, which is still, yes, a seed oil, but I'm not even going to get into the seed oil discussion. It's a seed oil, but at least it's using high oleic, whereas oleic acid is a much better fat that you're still going to have in sunflower oil. So basically what they've done is they've concentrated the oleic, which is fine. So I prefer this, but there's still random corn syrup in these crackers. Like, I can't imagine that finding a cracker that doesn't have corn syrup would have been that hard. And I can't imagine that it would have affected the margin that much, like a fraction of a percent. And you would have been able to make such a stronger claim. Some of these things just boggle my mind as to, like, if you want to be able to make these claims, why not be able to back them up? Like, if you look net, if you made a better effort to have better ingredients in these foods, if you could actually back up these claims and say that you're making a better product, then maybe you wouldn't have online backlash and it might work out better in the long run. Now then, of course, there's a chocolate bar, but a chocolate bar is a chocolate bar, and the turkey surprisingly wasn't all that bad. So in their defense, like the Lunchly turkey stackers one isn't all that bad. So if you had to choose one of those, I would choose the turkey stackers. But like, what could you do that's slightly even better than going with a Lunchly option? I mean, maybe you could just like get some salami, or you could get some prosciutto, which is just gonna be like ham and salt. Maybe you could get some Applegate Farms turkey, which is a little bit cleaner. Maybe you could just make something simple, like buy a little bit of cheese. Like you could just put this all in a Ziploc bag and call it a day for probably cheaper anyway. But let's talk about some statistics here. This is what's kind of wild. So in 2023, the food market for kids was $137 billion. Okay, so it has a compounded annual growth rate of over 5%, which puts it at over $250 billion by 2030. That's huge, right? So no wonder they were taking advantage of this. And you look at the margins on a food like this, and it's like in an industry where food margins are fairly slim, the margin in a food like this is going to be decent, especially when, again, you're bringing in a food that you've already had, like prime or electrolyte drinks, already created, right? So easy to source. That shaves off some, making the margin a little bit better. You have a collaborative effort between 3 major YouTubers, so that's going to make marketing expenses less. So going direct to consumer and eventually getting it to retail, all these things are going to be easier. But here's where the issue lands. In a projected to be $250 billion industry, and currently a $137 billion industry, 60 to 70% of the foods marketed to kids are processed foods. Where we actually have to get a little bit more granular is that in 1991, it was estimated about 61% was going to be processed foods marketed to kids, okay, for kids. Here we are in 2024, it's actually only at 67%. So it actually hasn't grown that much. What's growing the most is the ready-to-eat options. So in 1991, 2.2%, flashing forward to now, we're at more like 12%, right? So a lot more ready-to-eat options, but not a heck of a lot more in the way of processed food options for kids, because options for kids that have been marketed to kids have almost always been processed food, because that's what kids want. That's what they think they want, at least, like cereals and whatnot. But what I want to stress upon everybody is that if you look at countries like Norway and countries like Sweden, like they have banned marketing to kids altogether. And there is a noticeable change in what can happen with childhood obesity rates and marketing to children themselves. And not just Norway and Sweden, like a lot of the EU ends up banning the marketing of children's foods to children before certain hours. So like before 9 p.m., a lot of countries aren't even allowed to advertise children's food products, let alone junk products. And there was a study that was published in Obesity Reviews. I'm just going to read the quote to you. There's a significant association between the proportion of children that are overweight and the number of advertisements per hour on children's TV, especially those ads that encourage the consumption of energy-dense, micronutrient-poor foods. And if you look at European Code 1924-2006, there are strict guidelines surrounding even making claims, even calling a food healthy or calling a compound of a food natural. So to be able to say like Lunchly is healthy or a healthy version of Lunchables, candidly, in the EU would probably not even fly. Like you couldn't even make a claim like that. So my issue isn't with Logan Paul, it isn't with Mr. Beast, it isn't with KSI, who candidly I've never even heard of until now. It just seems like this is another game of nuance in marketing where you can get by with a lot of little things to say, hey, yes, it's marginally better based on the sheer, but are we contributing to the bigger problem? Are we also misleading? Are we also making people feel like just because something is lower calorie, that it's better? Because I don't think we just have a calorie problem on our hands. We have a nutrient quality problem on our hands. And we have a marketing problem on our hands. Because if we continue to just promote these kinds of things, we just contribute to the poor psychology and eating patterns and behaviors that are the root of the issue to begin with. It's not just about the foods. It's not just about the calories. We have a bigger picture at hand. I'm curious your opinion on this. Again, no malice towards them at all. I just question whether this is really ethical and if we're doing the right thing here by marketing as such. I'll see you tomorrow.